You didn't become cold. You became unreachable. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped settling. Learning your worth doesn't make you distant. It makes you selective. And not everyone gets access to this version of you. At first, it feels strange. You notice. You don't respond as fast. You don't explain as much. You don't chase clarity. Not out of ego, out of self-respect. You used to be available to everyone's confusion, their mixed signals, their inconsistency, their emotional chaos. You called that patience. But patience without reciprocity is self-abandonment. Learning your worth changes what you tolerate. You stop answering messages that drain you. You stop engaging with people who only reach out when it's convenient. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. And that's when some people say, "You've changed." They're right. You changed because you stopped negotiating with your boundaries. Before, you were reachable because you were flexible. Flexible with your time, flexible with your standards, flexible with your needs. Now, you're grounded. Grounded people aren't easy to access, not because they're guarded, but because they're rooted. You no longer feel the urge to prove your value. You don't audition for love. You observe. You listen. You notice effort. Learning your worth teaches you something important. Attention is not connection. Words are not commitment. Intensity is not intimacy. So you stop confusing interest with investment. You stop mistaking potential for presence. And that alone makes you unreachable to the wrong people. Because people who only wanted your energy without responsibility can't reach you anymore. They don't know how to show up. When you stop overgiving, you also notice how calm your body feels. Less anxiety, less overthinking, less emotional noise. Because your nervous system finally understands. You don't have to be chosen to be valuable. You don't chase. You don't convince. You don't compete. You allow. And what's aligned moves closer. What isn't falls away. Not dramatically, naturally. Learning your worth doesn't isolate you. It filters. It filters out those who benefited from your self-doubt. And it protects the part of you that once gave too much to be loved. You become unreachable, not because you built walls, but because you built standards. And standards change access. Once you learn your worth, your nervous system changes. Not overnight, but steadily. You stop reacting from urgency. You stop responding from fear. Before, silence felt like rejection. Now, it feels like information. You don't fill the gap. You don't chase reassurance. You let space speak. And space always tells the truth. People who are aligned step forward. People who were benefiting from your availability step back. Both responses are clarity. You also notice how much energy you used to give away just to feel secure. The over-explaining, the over-giving, the emotional labor. Learning your worth returns that energy to you. You begin to feel fuller, not inflated, rooted. You don't need validation to regulate. You don't need consistency to feel calm because you've learned how to provide safety internally. This is where true self-worth lives, not in confidence performances, but in nervous system stability. You stop romanticizing attention. You start valuing presence. You stop chasing intensity. You choose steadiness. That choice changes who can reach you. People who thrive on chaos lose access. People who rely on confusion lose leverage. Because confusion can't attach to clarity, you also become honest. In a new way, not louder, cleaner. Your no is simple. Your yes is intentional. Your silence isn't passive. It's discerning. Learning your worth means you don't negotiate. With misalignment, you don't try to be understood by people who don't want to understand you. You let misunderstanding exist without fixing it. That's a level of peace you can't fake, and people feel it. Some are drawn in by your calm, others feel exposed by it, because calm doesn't engage with manipulation. It doesn't chase, it doesn't explain, it doesn't perform. You also stop seeking closure from others because you give it to yourself. You don't need conversations to validate what you experienced. You trust your perception. You trust your body. You trust your response. That trust makes you unreachable to gaslighting, unreachable to breadcrumbing, unreachable to half-effort connections. Not because you hardened, but because you healed. You don't collapse when someone pulls away. You don't overextend to be chosen. You don't wait for clarity that isn't coming. You move on with dignity, quietly. And in that quiet, something powerful happens. You start attracting different energy, people who respect time, people who communicate clearly, people who don't test boundaries, because boundaries don't need defending when they're embodied. Learning your worth didn't make you unreachable to love. It made you unreachable to what drains you. As your worth becomes embodied, your relationships recalibrate, not because you demand more, but because you accept less. You stop teaching people how to treat you. You let their behavior do the talking. Before, you corrected misunderstandings. You clarified intentions. You offered second chances before the first one was earned. Now, you observe. Observation replaces explanation, and that changes everything. You notice who follows through, who shows up consistently, who doesn't need reminders. You stop confusing effort with words. You stop giving credit for potential. You start responding to reality. This makes you unreachable to emotional inconsistency, because inconsistency requires your participation to continue, and you no longer participate. You also become harder to emotionally hook, not because you don't feel, but because you feel without losing yourself. You don't spiral over delayed replies. You don't personalize distance. You don't chase emotional availability. You let people meet you where they are, and if they can't, you don't follow them there. Learning your worth changes your relationship with endings. You don't cling. You don't dramatize. You don't self-blame. You release quietly, gracefully, without needing the other person to understand. That's strength. You also stop being triggered by rejection, because rejection no longer defines you. It simply redirects you. You understand now. Not everyone who desires you is capable of holding you, and capacity matters more than chemistry. So when someone shows limited capacity, you don't push. You pull back, not out of fear, out of clarity. This makes you unreachable to people who only wanted access to your emotional labor. They feel the shift because you're no longer doing the heavy lifting. You're no longer maintaining momentum alone. You're no longer available for one-sided effort. And some people don't like that. They may say you've changed. They may say you're distant. They may say you're difficult. But what they really mean is, you stop being convenient. Learning your worth means choosing alignment over attachment, even when attachment feels familiar, even when attachment feels comfortable, even when attachment feels safe, because familiar doesn't always mean healthy. And now, you can feel the difference. Your body relaxes around the right people. You don't brace. You don't overthink. You don't manage impressions. You simply are. And that's the deepest sign of self-worth integration. Presence without performance. connection without contraction, love without self-erasure. You become unreachable, not because you hide, but because you stand still in who you are. At some point, you stop noticing the change because it becomes normal. Normal to pause before responding, normal to listen to your body, normal to walk away without explanation. You no longer feel the need to announce your worth. You live it. Your life becomes quieter, not emptier, cleaner. You have fewer conversations that drain you, fewer connections that confuse you, fewer moments where you question yourself because self-worth has settled in your nervous system. It's no longer a concept. It's a filter. You don't chase closure. You don't revisit the past, looking for meaning. You already extracted the lesson. And the lesson was simple. You were never asking for too much. You were asking the wrong people. Now, you don't overinvest. Before consistency appears, you let time reveal character. You let behavior confirm words. You let alignment unfold without force. This makes you unreachable to manipulation, unreachable to emotional shortcuts, unreachable to half-effort love. Not because you're guarded, because you're grounded. You still love deeply, but you don't disappear doing it. You still open your heart, but you don't leave it unattended. You've learned the difference between availability and accessibility. You're available to love, but access is earned, and that distinction protects your peace. You no longer fear being alone because you're no longer abandoning yourself. You trust that what's aligned will find you without self-betrayal. And if something passes you by, you let it, because what's meant for you doesn't require you to lose yourself to keep it. That's the quiet power of knowing your worth, not dominance, not control, self-loyalty. And if this reflection met you where you are, you're welcome to stay here. There's more clarity, more grounded reminders, more conversations about choosing yourself without becoming hard. Subscribe when it feels right. And if someone you love is still learning this lesson, share this with them. Sometimes the right words arrive exactly when they're needed. You're not unreachable to love. You're unreachable to what can't meet you. And that's exactly where peace begins.